All right, welcome back, artists. Hey, today we are going to paint with watercolor paint. I'm going to teach you guys a few techniques, how to use it, and make it work for you better. We're going to start with glazing. I like to use glazing when I want to create a lot of depth in my painting. All right, before I paint, let me remind you how to use these liquid watercolors. Remember to keep them in the tray. That way they won't spill on your artwork. Open each individual container carefully. Hold it with one hand. Pop the lid off. Put the lid back in the container and put the paint back in the container. I know you guys are going to be responsible with that. Have a rag. Get a rag from the supply area. I like to put my paint on top of the rag and then put it in the middle of the table so everyone can reach it. The rag is an important part of your tools because you'll use it to dry your paintbrush. The trick with watercolor paint, guys, is you don't want too much water. You have to use the water to dilute the paint. But if there's too much water on your paper, you're just going to get a big puddle of water. It's not good. You want to use a little bit of water, just enough to really damp the paper. If you have a puddle of water, that's no good. No bueno. Okay, so glazing is when you put one color on top of another color. Don't forget your clean container of water. I am going to start with yellow. And I'm just going to paint a circle of yellow right there. And I will let that dry. Okay. Dab my brush, rinse it off. Now let's do some wet on wet. Wet on wet. There's two ways to do wet on wet. One way to do it is to just paint your paper with water. This is a really good way to paint a large area. Say you're doing a field. I can paint with just water and then lay my color on for my field. And the colors, the paint will kind of bleed and blend together. Don't forget to rinse your paintbrush if you're going to change colors in your palette because we don't want to contaminate these colors. Whoops. I did green and then green again. Dry my paintbrush, rinse, dry. Now I'm going to get some yellow. I'm going to add some yellow in here. So the other way to do it is to add wet paint on top of wet paint. And you can see those colors bleed and blend together. Baby paintbrush. I'm going to get just a little bit of blue on here. And wet on wet with blue. So when you add that, you can make some fun little marks. This might be a fun way to add flowers to my field or just to make these fun bleeding marks. Now I want you guys to notice, see how the color is puddling up right here? I have too much water, so I want to get rid of that water. How you do that is I like to take the bigger paintbrush, dry it off with the rag so it's nice and dry, and then I come back in here and I can pick up all that water. That's why it's important to not have those puddles, and you just come back in with a dry brush and scoop up that water. And remember, artists, there's no mistake in art, so if it starts to dry and I don't like the way it's drying, I'm just going to come back in with a dry brush and kind of dab it a little bit and move it around and see how it changes. All right, so that's wet on wet. That's a good way to make colors bleed and blend together. But don't overdo it with the water, otherwise you're just going to make a big ugly brown. Okay, the next one is blotting. Blot, I think there's two T's. Blotting. I like to use a rag, tissue, cotton ball, anything that will pick up the moisture of the paint. So with blotting, say I'm painting a sky. I'll lay my pigment down And suppose I want to put some clouds in there. I can use the tissue and pull, see how it pulls the color up? But I want to leave some of the darker because we want to create that contrast. And we'll let that dry, then you can come back in, do another layer, and do some more blotting. So you have to remember, watercolor paint is a building up of colors. And wax resist. This is a fun one. White crayon. Draw with a white crayon. Wax resist is a really nice technique to use if you want to keep something white, because you'll notice with watercolor paint, there is no white paint. So if you want something white, you either don't paint it or you use a white crayon. And you can draw what you want to be white with the white crayon, but you have to push kind of hard, because what happens if I don't push hard enough, then the color will go right over the wax. All right, let's see what we have here. Okay, I'm going to move all that color around. There we go. I think you can see that. So where I drew, there is no pigment. I'm going to lay a little bit of purple down here. I don't know what I drew. I'm doing some wet on wet. And look at how the purple, when it mixes with the greenish, because the green is kind of a yellow, it makes somewhat of a blue violet. And the blue violets over here, the purple here, it makes different nice values. Be experimental with your colors. See what happens if you add different colors, do different things. Remember, think about contrast. So if I got a dark color here, I'm going to have a light color here. Dark color here, light color here. And then I'm going to clean my paintbrush. And then I'm just going to pull some of this red down into the green and blend it out. So you're getting that push-pull, that the difference with the contrast, light color against a dark color. My yellow isn't quite dry yet for my glazing, so we're going to give that a few more minutes. And let's see, the blotting looks kind of dry, so I'm going to come back here with, I'm going to put a little bit of blue on top of the purple, and maybe redefine some of this. So this could look like maybe a sky. Use my smaller paintbrush now and just soften these edges. This is called hard edge. See how it's a hard edge? This over here would be soft edge, where you add a little bit more water and let the colors blend or glaze together. So you guys can think about that in your artwork too, creating those different contrasts, hard edge against a soft edge. All right. And let's finish with the glazing. That was yellow. What will happen if we put red on top of it? Very good. We'll get orange. I'm going to use a little bit of red. This is a really dark red. Look how dark that is. Don't want that quite so dark. There we go. Oh. Now, if you drip, rag mostly comes off. So if I put the red on top of the yellow, you can see where it's still kind of pink here on the white, but then here it turns kind of an orange color. So that's glazing, and you can do that multiple times. I could put another layer of yellow on top of that after it dries to make it even more orange and make it a little bit stronger, and that would be a nice contrast between this pale red, kind of a pink color. All right, well, those are a few techniques for you guys to try, and then do some experimenting on your own. Have fun painting, artists.